Welcome to Unit 1, Video 4. In this video, we will be talking about ancient river valley civilizations. In your notes packet, please turn to the section titled Guided Notes on Early Civilizations. Within this section, we will discuss Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, and China. We're going to start with ancient Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia was located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers within the Fertile Crescent. If you take a look at the map on this page, you can see that the Fertile Crescent is this whole area of green, located between the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean Sea. The blue lines here on the edges represent the two rivers, the Tigris River and the Euphrates River, and the lines in between represent where Mesopotamia was located. It was a civilization that was made up of many different cities or city-states, and these city-states would be governed in different ways. They would have the same general culture and religion, but they would be run in different ways. There would be a different leader of each city-state throughout the area between these two rivers. This was a very, very good place for an early civilization because of how fertile the land was. It was very good for farming for crops. Hence the name Fertile Crescent. It was very fertile land, and it was in the shape of a crescent, like a crescent moon. In Mesopotamia, they had specialized labor. Once we reach the Neolithic era and people settle down, they're not moving around as much, we do see an increase in specialization of labor. What this means is that people could have jobs other than just collection of food. So certain types of specialized labor in Mesopotamia included farming, so food was still included, merchants, metal workers, and priests. Priests would be in charge of the ziggurats. A ziggurat is what is pictured here. It's kind of like a pyramid structure, but it has a temple at the very top. These were religious temples in ancient Mesopotamia, and they were very important. They were in the center of a city-state. The buildings that were in the center held the most importance. So religion was very important in ancient Mesopotamia. They were a polytheistic society, which means that they believe in many different gods. In terms of technology, Mesopotamia had a very advanced irrigation system. Irrigation is basically how you are able to water the plants. They didn't have the types of technology we have today for watering plants. And if it's not going to rain all the time, the plants do still need water in order to grow. If they cannot grow, then there's no food to feed the people. So the irrigation system was very, very important to the success of the farming in Mesopotamia, the ability to feed as many people as were living there. In terms of record keeping, Mesopotamia did have a writing system known as cuneiform. Cuneiform was written on clay tablets with something called a stylus. It's kind of like what you would see used on an iPad today. Sometimes people will use something called a stylus, except in ancient Mesopotamia, it would be made of reed. It's almost like a type of wood. And so that would be used to write on clay tablets while the clay was wet. And then when it dried, it would be permanently written. This is an example of a clay tablet with cuneiform written on it. If you take a look, it's kind of like wedge shapes. That's usually how you'll hear it referred to, is a wedge shape writing. And this is what a tablet would look like. The government system in ancient Mesopotamia was ruling by military leaders who became kings. So there would be one king who would be in charge of each city-state in Mesopotamia, and they would kind of run it their own way. Across Mesopotamia, though, there was the world's first known written law code, which was known as Hammurabi's Code, named after the king who created it. It had 282 laws, and it was engraved in stone, so it could become a permanent a permanent set of laws that people could look at. And it was known as, you might be more familiar with it as an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That is because the actual laws were very much you do something to someone, they do the exact same thing back to you. So here are some examples of what would be found in Hammurabi's code. You can take a look at these. As you look at them, you can see that whatever it is you do to someone else, basically they can do back to you. It was considered a very harsh law code, but the point was to be harsh because the harsher the laws, the more likely people would make sure they would follow them. And so this is considered the first known written law system in history. In ancient Mesopotamia, we talked already a little bit about the different city-states, how they're ruled by different kings. They are each going to trade with one another. Trading is very important in ancient Mesopotamia. Not every city-state will have the same resources as others, and so they're going to trade with one another very openly. And finally, for Mesopotamia, we have the social hierarchy. As you can see, kings and priests are located at the top. Underneath the kings and the priests, you find wealthy merchants. Merchants are people who sell goods. Ordinary Sumerian people would be next, and finally at the bottom would be slaves. Slavery did exist in ancient Mesopotamia. However, it was not based on race. It was based on being captured in wartime, or it was based on owing debts that you could not repay most often. But at this time in history, slavery based on race did not exist. So this is the end of the section on ancient Mesopotamia.